welcome everybody. This is pretty exciting. This is the education series portion of the Themed Attraction Student Showcase. We're thrilled to have both entrants and oh gosh, what's the word we have instead of judges? Panelists. Yes, we have all kinds of great folks on here, and it's a good chance to learn together and be part of this community that continues to grow in really good and exciting ways, and we love it. It's going to be real hard not to be jealous of Sally walking through Manhattan. That would be such a blast. So, but you need to stay on so that we can see if anything cool happens. So, but we're excited today to have a really special showcase education series event with Logan Zawacki from Sally Dark Ride. He's a project manager, and really he's become a really good friend over the past couple years, and a great friend to the industry as he's continued to build his career. So he's going to share with us a little bit about his career, his background, what he does. And later on, we're going to get into a little bit of a Q&A. And we do encourage anybody who has a question, that even live, that something triggers a thought or a question, please do feel free to go ahead and unmute yourself. And it would be nice along the way if you did put up the little hand signal that you can find down in the reactions button at the bottom of Zoom. So if you do want to ask a question, go ahead and raise a hand or a thumb, or go ahead and raise a hand. And but if you need to interrupt, go right ahead and interrupt. The hand helps Logan and I say, oh, this person has a question. Well, with that, let's get right into it. Logan, are you ready? Or
yeah,
you want to go
bring
out
it on.
All right, I'm not going to tend the garden before. If you're ready, we're ready. Welcome everybody, Logan Zawacki.
All right. Thank you so much, all of you, for attending this, as well as for those of you who have submitted different things to the student showcase. Some amazing submissions. As I've been reviewing them, I'm just blown away. So thank you for participating and sharing with all of us your amazing skills and dreams and designs, everything. It's so cool. So as Freddie mentioned, I am a project manager at Sally Dark Rides. So one of the things that I do as a project manager, I am the main point of contact for the company, our subcontractors, our client, and oftentimes our IP holder. And so really, project management involves from contract all the way to handover. Every single step along the way, you are managing, you are coordinating every aspect. So oftentimes when students talk to me and they're telling me about their different skills and what they're really into, often project management is not considered, mainly because it's not the glorious job that creative director or designer may be. Everybody wants to be the designer and the director, but in reality, the project manager is the person who has their hands on everything, every single aspect from initial design. We're involved, not necessarily making designs. Some project managers are heavily involved with making designs, but you're involved in the design phase, the fabrication phase, as well as the installation and implementation phase. And so project management is full scope, which a lot of roles and responsibilities in our industry do not allow that. You often are a small part of the bigger puzzle. But as I keep reiterating, project management is involved with it all, every single step. So it really is the all-encompassing, and you get to do all the travel and all the fun stuff that comes along with each one of the projects. Now, Freddie, as far as the questions and stuff, do you want me to kind of just go into a little bit of background first, and then we'll go into the questions?
Yeah, no, I'd love to get a little bit of background, where you came from, and what brought you into this crazy, strange, wonderful, fun, and chaotic industry, and then a bit about, you know, your role at Sally, how that came about. I mean, I think
Yeah.
that's one of the major touch points is for a lot of people is what was a transition from not to from having not to having.
Yeah, absolutely. So growing up in Florida, always went to the theme parks, always loved the theme parks, was always into art and design, graphic design, illustration, wanted to be a comic book artist most of my life, then realized I couldn't meet the deadlines. So I was like, can't do that, got to find another career. Fell in love with graphic design, went and pursued a BFA in graphic design, got that afterwards. Really, I would say struggled as a post grad, having my BFA in graphic design, but not having any work experience made it very difficult to find jobs. So I was taking every single job I could get, doing a lot of freelance work. Also, while pursuing my BFA, I fell in love with photography. And so I have a BFA in photography, or a BFA in graphic design, minor in photography, eventually leading to me coming back to my alma mater of the University of North Florida and taking over as the photo lab specialist. So I was the lab manager for the photo department. And so I did that for 4.5 years. And really that developed my love for teaching and working with students, helping them to achieve the goals that they wanted to achieve. And along the way, just further refining my skills as both a photographer and an illustrator, doing a lot of freelance work while working full time. That led to me going back to school to pursue an MFA so I could become a photography professor. While pursuing my MFA in photography at Savannah College of Art and Design, I met the awesome Professor Peter Weishar. In fact, I was very, very, very fortunate to take what at the time was just a very exclusive off-campus program called Walt Disney Imagineering. So you can imagine it was a pretty awesome class. And so we spent a spring break in between our quarters. We spent the entire spring break at Walt Disney World and got to learn everything about the behind the scenes, about what goes into the design, the concept, from blue sky all the way to fabrication, all the way to implementation, getting to experience it all. And that was really the moment where I was like, oh my God, if this was an MFA, I would not be getting my photography MFA. But at that point, I was already too far down the line in my photo MFA, and I already had jobs lined up. And so it was the goal. That's what I was pursuing. And even though the introduction to this class really expanded, it blew my mind. It expanded what was capable that I never knew was capable before. It was always just Imagineers are these people who are magical, and that's it. And that's it. Like only the elite of elite can become this. And yet being there, meeting them, just like when people meet famous actors and they're like, they were just normal people.
Yeah.
Realizing that, and also getting the opportunity to talk with them and realize that many of them were like, yeah, we are considered masters at our craft, but we didn't start that way. We've been doing this, some of us, 30, 40 years working with Walt himself. That's what led to us getting to this stage and being the masters we are, and that it wasn't an overnight success. And oftentimes people just forget that, or they want that overnight success that is just only achievable through years and years and years of experience and the knowledge gained through doing. And so really just that class opened my mind to all kinds of possibilities. But like I mentioned, I was already on track. I was pursuing my MFA in photography. I finished pursuing my MFA in photography and went right into teaching. Was very blessed to get adjunct teaching positions back in Jacksonville, which is my home, both at the University of North Florida and the Art Institute of Jacksonville. That led to a visiting assistant professor position at UNF. So I was coming home, I was getting that position, I was full-time, I was beyond excited, all my dreams were coming true. And then the tenure track position came up, and very excited about that. Applied, came down to me and one other person, and needless to say, I did not get it.
Oh my.
So after essentially 15 years with that particular school, all of the time spent as a student and the teaching specialist, and then coming back as a professor, it still did not create a shoe-in guarantee for the tenure track position.
Yep. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And so then it was like, what now? So thankfully, the Art Institute, they were in desperate need of a project coordinator. And so I was able to segue all my experience in design, as well as all my experience in management, managing the photo lab, and apply that to this new position that I was very thankful to be awarded. And so as a project coordinator, I then managed what started as 3 and eventually became 4 departments at the Art Institute. And then not only did that involve managing just the day-to-day schedules and coordinating with the actual professors, it meant managing every student in those 4 departments, because it was a small campus. Everything was going great. I was loving it. Life was good. All my dreams were coming true. And then the school announced it was closing.
Oh my goodness.
So now I went from Jacksonville, the home of all this opportunity and teaching, to, all right, there's 3 colleges in town. One of them has no positions available anymore. The other one is closing. And then the only other one left literally had no positions available and weren't going to have any until basically somebody died. So no time soon. And not to mention, my wife was also a college photography professor. So
you're in competition with her?
Yes. And when the Art Institute announced it was closing, not just one of us, but both of us lost our jobs because we were both working there. Yeah. Thankfully, they had what they were calling a teach out. So in the teach out, they said, we will guarantee every single student here gets their degree. Those who are enrolled, we will keep all the professors necessary employed so you can get your degree and you can graduate from this campus. So the plan was in reality, I was going to go down with the ship. That was the plan. I was like, I'm here for the students. I'm going to make sure that they get the best education possible with the time that's left. And then by chance, my coworker, who was right next door, Bill Keevy, who now works for Walt Disney, he came and knocked on my door, and he's like, "Oh yeah, hey, Logan. So this company in town, Sally Corporation at the time, they are looking to hire a 3D designer," and that was his expertise. So he's like, this would be great. This is exactly the job I've been wanting. The creative director reached out to me once I posted that I was looking for work. And he said, by the way, they also had this other job available. And after talking with him about it, originally he's like, I think your wife would be perfect for this job. I think she would really want it. And I was like, what? Because again, she's very organized. She's good at managing. She's got all the skills necessary, the background in graphic design as well. So it's like, okay, I get it. And then I went home, talked to my wife, just And I was like, I want this job so bad. I've got to apply. I've got to talk to Bill tomorrow, and I got to make it happen. And with that, I went in the next day, had to talk with him, and I was like, yeah, so my wife politely declined, but I am 100% interested. And, you know, they say luck is when preparation and opportunity combine, and that's exactly what it was. This was one of those situations where I wasn't looking to just get out of Art Institute immediately. I was in a position where I didn't need to leave, but it was an amazing opportunity that I couldn't pass up, so I had to apply. And I was prepared with all of my documents. I had all my resumes, my portfolio, everything ready to go, because I knew I was going to be losing my job within, you know, the next year or two with the closeout. And so it just worked out to where I had everything lined up. I was ready to go. I had my resume, my introductory paper that I sent, and emails directly to the VP of project management. I'd already reached out, and she even said, she's like, before I came into work the next morning and got to my desk, I already had 3 people giving recommendations for you when I have no idea who you were. But it was between the connections I already had working within Sally, as well as really just the sort of all the skills and opportunities I've established over the year, and not to mention my passion for the industry. It just sort of came together in this perfect explosion. And went in, interviewed, everything went so good. And then...
Oh, don't tell me. Then they closed. No.
No, but in a very polite way, I was told, you'll never get this job. By at least one of the team members. And so it took some time and some convincing, and they reopened and continued searching and interviewing internally, and probably like a month and a half went by, and I just kept telling them, you know, I'm here if y'all need me, if you change your minds. And so ended up interviewing 3 or 4 times, coming back, interviewing with different people, and finally the perseverance, the passion, and just selling myself paid off. And I just, you know, I asked them to take a chance on me, and that's what got my foot in the door, combined with all of the, not just the skills I had that would help me do the project management role, but also knowing all of the X factors. Like, wait a minute, he's got a graphic design degree and an MFA in photography, and he does all these presentations, and he's a former teacher. It's like, they could have easily just hired somebody who had construction experience, but instead they took a chance on somebody who could learn construction, but had all these other things that you can't teach easily.
Right. Hey, Andrew, you got a question?
Yeah, I was curious. What was your story is very similar to sort of where I'm finding myself right now. Did they give you a reason why they said initially you wouldn't be hired? Was it because the lack of specific experience? And
Yes.
then okay.
Yeah, thankfully, what I really appreciated was the fact that it wasn't just a you suck, you know, it wasn't like you're not getting the job because we don't like you. It was a, hey, look, this is the reality. The reality is this search just started. You may be loved by several members of the team, but we need to continue this search out of respect for the internal employees who also deserve an opportunity to apply for this. Totally agree. 100%. Also, you don't have any experience in construction. You also don't come from a audio video background. I had a lot to learn. There's no question about it. I was coming in with a strong set of soft skills and many design skills and a broad understanding of the industry already, which I'm telling you, that was a huge benefit to me. Taking that Walt Disney Imagineering class and really understanding how the industry works set me up for huge success, and even just having conversations with everyone. But at the end of the day, there were certain responsibilities or skills that I lacked, and I couldn't argue with them. I couldn't. And I said, look, I respect what you're telling me. I totally understand. Continue your search. If you find that there isn't anybody who is more qualified than me or a better candidate, I'm here.
Yeah.
I had a job, so I was able to kind of play it cool. I didn't need the job. I wasn't fired in like desperate need of a job. I was still getting a steady paycheck as part of the teach out. I knew my job was coming to an end. So honestly, it was a great opportunity for them to snatch me before somebody else did, because that's sort of the reality. But it worked out great. And I can't emphasize enough too, whenever you're going through interviews and you're talking with people and they tell you exactly why you're not getting the job, it's so great to hear.
Yeah.
Because it gives you not only something to reply back to in regards to, look, I know I don't have this, but I have this, or I promise you I can learn that. Who's now my boss, she looked at my resume and she saw my past experience and she's like, this guy got a 4.0 in graduate school. Like, we can teach him, he can learn, and that's the reality too, is there's major things that are hard to teach somebody. Kindness is hard to teach somebody. Communication skills, it's hard to teach somebody. But when we're talking about, how to understand how the stages of construction work, you can teach somebody that.
Yeah.
You're not asking them to go out and construct. You're asking them to manage the phases and just make sure that they're hitting these dates. And that can be taught. So like really understanding exactly what you're getting into. And like I tell everybody, every college student, when you're applying for jobs, if you can do 80% of the job, apply. And then you just got to sell. You got to sell. The other 20% you can do, and also wager what skills you have that are not part of the required list.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, speaking of that, as you moved into a position, you're hired as a project manager?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Okay. So as you moved into the position, as a device to help you describe what the process is from design to concept and handing people the keys, what were those things that you discovered? Oh, this is something I don't know, and then I need to learn. What are those roadblocks to your getting the job that you had to discover quick?
Well, like I mentioned, construction was a major part of it. And in fact, many project management jobs, if you are looking at project management jobs, many of them even require some kind of engineering background or architecture background, specifically because it is or can be a very construction heavy job. Depending on the company you're working for. For instance, there's many project managers in IT. You don't need to know anything about construction. In our industry, it's much more hand in hand. So it is more of the sort of project management construction side versus strictly managing. And you'll find there's so many different titles within our industry. You'll have a project manager versus project coordinator. Yeah. You'll find the bigger the company, the more tiers that are involved, the more titles there are. In reality, when you read the job descriptions, they're pretty much, many of them are doing the exact same job. They just have different titles based off of seniority, or if you're more of a working on a show side or a design side versus a construction fabrication side.
Yeah.
But yeah, the construction side of things was definitely something I needed to learn. But again, I was able to. I got a bunch of books. I studied like crazy. Also, I used my photography skills to heavily document every single phase of the projects. So when I was on site, I was on site very quickly after getting hired. And so I got to see firsthand what it looks like on a construction site, how things look, not just the finished product, but at the very beginning when everything's just a shell and you just see steel and some gypsum board and you know, clean concrete floors, and that's it. And so to understand and document every step of the way, it helped me better understand and keep track of not only these are the steps of construction. This is my visual learning side is developing this visual language that I understand by taking these photos. I was even able to go back and always use those photos as a reminder. And I use it as a way to keep track of the schedule. So I can look back and I'm like, well, wait a minute. It took them exactly 7 days to get up this sheetrock, to put 2 layers of tape and mud on here. So why is it now on this new project taking them 3 weeks? You know, it's like being able to just kind of compare and contrast and understand along the way what the problems are and how to adapt to them.
Right. Yeah. Trying to learn and use the tools at your disposal to use to learn. I saw a moose on Sunday, and I thought to pull out my camera and take a picture of it so I would remember where I saw that moose, because I've got I've got some data that's going to back me up. So now you got me thinking I really need to be taking more pictures. Andrew, you had a question, I thought.
No, I just forgotten to put my hand down from the first question.
So what else? What else? As you discovered the process, what was the process of going from that first, blue sky or charrette work through the design and then you get into your schematic design and all that? How does the process work for those of us who aren't doing it every day?
Well, the simplest way to describe it is you have design, fabrication, installation. That's the simplest way. The three, those are just sort of the 3 main phases, which a lot of times in school, you work on design, but it's impossible to actually execute on fabrication and installation. So that's one of the best things. Yes, exactly. Maybe in the virtual world, but so that's one of the aspects that for me, specifically where I work at Sally Dark Rides, I work hand in hand with design, but I don't have to necessarily manage design. More of my job is focused on once we go to contract. So in a lot of ways, most of the initial concept, blue sky design work is already done. And we have now gone to an official, we've moved out of design contract and we're now into a fabrication and installation contract. That's really when my job kicks into full gear. And I now am working not only with the design team to make sure their design intent is implemented from every stage thereon. I'm also, at this point, we might be hiring the different vendors or subcontractors if we're not doing it in-house. So we're now starting to coordinate everything, start to make the schedule. So we're talking about the planning, the budgeting, the scheduling, the coordinating, sometimes designing, sometimes constructing, depending on the kind of company you work for. You may still be hands-on in the shop or even hands-on on the construction site once you move into that installation phase or preparation phase. Once we get to the later points, then you are managing the installation. You're working with the field operations and making sure everything's going right. You're leading small and large teams. So having those communication skills, those interpersonal skills are critical, especially when you may be traveling around the world and you've got to quickly learn how to adapt, be a chameleon wherever you are, because you're on somebody else's turf. You need to set aside whatever your cultural biases are and really understand how things work in that country where you are working. So that way everybody is in a work environment that is meeting all objectives and keeping people safe and healthy and happy. Ensuring the quality of the fabrication and design intent, like I mentioned earlier. The project reporting, like I mentioned with taking my photos. Yeah.
Talk about design intent real quick, because that's really, you know, from concept designers and storytellers, that becomes the, you know, I really want it to come out this way. And then there's a lot of compromise that has to be made because of scope, schedule, budget as we're getting closer to the end. So how do you manage that expectation of consistency from concept?
Honesty is a big part of it. Not, you know, just being honest with people goes a long way. Understanding that things have to change. It's an inevitable. It's the only thing that you can rely on any project, is that things will change. Nothing will go perfectly. Nothing will go as well. I shouldn't say nothing. I take it back. Not nothing, but many aspects of the initial design, especially concept phase, many aspects are going to change, and many may change honestly before they've even left design.
Yeah.
So even as you're just moving from initial concept, moving into schematic design, moving into detailed design, every step of the way, things are going to have to change. And it's not just sometimes a budgetary reason, but it may also be, for instance, with an animatronic, it may have originally been designed to be on the right side of a room, but now we have to put it, due to various reasons, on the left side of the room. So we're now talking about a major modification, because originally this character was built in such a way where their left side would be to the wall, and now they have to change because they have to now be able to face and interact with a complete other side, which is almost a total rebuild. Right. So, you know, these things, the earlier you find them, the earlier you adjust and modify to them, the better you're going to be. That is just a fact. So the earlier you can make the change in design, when it's still a 2D drawing or a 3D model, before you move into fabrication and production, it's far cheaper, far easier. And then before you get on site as well, because once you get on site, then it's hard to keep the intent when things are made so incorrectly that they have to be dramatically modified just to work with a space. Yeah.
Hey, I just want to draw everybody's attention. If you don't have the meeting chat open, please do have it open. I really appreciate MK. She's a wealth of resources and she loves to share them. So there's quite a few resources she's been pointing us to along the way, which just really do point each one of the things that Logan's talking about. When you get down to the nitty-gritty of it, there's details you have to build and draw from and go into. So don't miss that opportunity to grab those resources.
Yeah. And if we're pimping books, theme park project management about Usul, wonderful book. Even me, a seasoned project manager, I love learning about different processes. And especially what's fascinating about this book is, in comparison to my job, is I work for a small company. We're a mighty, awesome company, but we're small. Reading about the project management of these massive projects specifically through Disney, it's fascinating for me, and I'm learning so much that honestly is even outside of my work experience, which is great.
Quick question from Christopher Stapleton. He really, I got caught into your character when you said just be truthful, and he says, wow, honesty, that's brave. How do you couch that honesty to get better results? I mean, language and expression is all a way that we couch or help to lead somebody in a direction. How are you couching that honesty when there's bad news or not the news they expected?
Oof. I mean, I think this goes back to the sort of interpersonal skills where you have to know how to read people.
Mm-hmm.
Some people, you have to dance around the truth. You have to say something in such a way that they think it's their idea in order to get it done. Because the moment you make a suggestion, they may think it's challenging them, and therefore it's shut down. So versus other people, they need to hear it bluntly. Like they need to hear less of a sort of design and craft, but coming at it from strictly a guest experience.
Mm-hmm.
Because they need to hear how is this going to impact the guest experience? That's our number one objective. So, oftentimes working with a client, that's sort of the direction you have to come from, is just, reiterating that this is not sort of the original intent we had in mind. And this is not going to give you the best guest experience
you have an
for
example
the money.
That you can share. Hey, we're all under a friendly.
Let's see.
Friendly.
Trying to think of the best example in this case. Well, it's sometimes there are very simple solutions that just involve making an agreement that it's like, this is a change, but it's not going to be a costly change. It's not going to dramatically change things. But if we do it now proactively, it's going to make it better.
Right.
Certain things, for instance, where you realize after, let's say, a device has been installed where this is a major storytelling device in your queue, and this element is really originally was never intended to have audio and was never intended to have a little video or any form of animation. But then after developing it in design, a little bit of animation was added, or after installing it, you realize it's actually interfering with other elements within the same scene. So we need to be able to control this, but it wasn't originally designed to be controlled. It was just designed to loop. So working that out and understanding, like, you're going to have to go to the client and say, hey, so we may need to run extra DMX lines, which is in your scope, which is going to cost you a little more money. But in the end, we're now going to have this great element that originally may have just had audio and was just looping, but now it actually is DMX controlled, so we can time it better with the other elements in the scene. We can also now add this animation to it, which makes it even more of a statement piece in the room. It just takes it from being a cool gag to being an exceptional, talked about element in this scene now. And so just working out with everyone and having that balance between who's, what are the costs going to be, who do they fall under, what are the responsibilities, and understanding too that it's just a lot of times we're all in it together. It's a partnership. So being able to remind people that when you're hired by a client and you're working with a client and an IP holder and all the vendors on site, everybody's in it together. So we either succeed as a team, creating the best project that'll get us a THEA, or we all fail together, regardless of who's responsible for what. Either it's a great, exceptional attraction, or it's unmemorable. So everybody's got to chip in and do their part. And at the end of the day, yes, there may be some change orders, but a lot of times it's a wash.
Sally, you had a question from the heart of Manhattan.
Actually City Hall. Logan, I have a background of working in construction management startups and also placemaking companies. And I know that part of the thrill is being part of a small team where you get to wear a lot of hats, and like
Yeah.
the situations are unpredictable, and that's the energy that I love in an office. But I also know that sometimes that comes with wearing shoes that you're not expert in. So I was curious if you ever had times early in your career where you actually felt like a fish, like too deep in the water. How did you work with the people in your office to come out the other side of that? And have you, or when did you reach a point where you felt like the imposter syndrome started to fall by the wayside?
Yeah.
Good question. Again, I'm going to harp back on those interpersonal skills, those communication skills, knowing my weaknesses, being upfront and honest with my team about like, look, guys, I'm not saying I'm bad at this, but I'm saying I may not be as knowledgeable as you are about this. Leaning on your team and, turning to them. Number one thing is not like where a lot of I feel like project managers and just managers in general get themselves in trouble is when you speak on behalf of your team too quickly, when you agree to things without discussing with your team first. And I feel like especially new employees are very quick to prove themselves by making really stupid decisions and agreeing to things without fully understanding what you just agreed to, because you don't know all of the ramifications. There are still situations where I'll sort of think, oh yeah, that's an easy change. That's going to hardly cost anything. But I haven't thought about every aspect. And if I don't talk with my team first, many times my team will be like, whoa, what did you think about this? Or did you think about this aspect? Or sure, on a design side, that may be cheap, but on a technical side, this is actually very expensive, or vice versa. And so not making quick decisions without discussing with your team first. You gain respect from your team when they see that you respect them. When you're showing leadership by taking the opportunity to put your big boy pants on or big girl pants on and just say, look, I don't have the answer for you right now. Give me an hour, give me a day, give me just a little bit of time, and I will get you a very educated, proper answer that will save all of us a lot of time and trouble and money if you just give me, in a day. And honestly, and I think when you are out to prove yourself, you prove yourself by supporting your team. When your team sees that you're there for them, that is how you rally the troops. That's how you get them behind you, when they see that you're actually there to make their jobs easier. When you don't give when you don't give a poop about your team, it shows, because you make decisions that have major ramifications for the amount of work they have to do and the time they have to spend away from their families. But when you're just like nonchalant about it because you're like, oh, we'll get it done, don't worry, and you promise anything and everything to a client or an IP holder or to your subcontractors, whoever it may be, that's where you really get yourself in trouble as a project manager.
That's brilliant. That's the key to working with a team, is having everybody's best interest in mind, especially when you're guiding that team. One of the questions along the way has been, what's the single most important skill needed for project managing? And I think we tend to think that it's things like spreadsheets, but it sounds like it's more on that soft skill world when you're dealing with so many different interests in project management.
Yeah, in my personal opinion, I think the two most important skills are communication and organizational skills. So, and those are, again, those goes back to those interpersonal skills, but it's really being somebody who's organized and being able to communicate that. If you can't communicate to your team, everyone's going to fail. You're all going to fail. You're going to all fail together. Congratulations. It's being able to effectively communicate. And think about it too. I'm traveling the world. I just got back from Spain. Being able to communicate not just in English, but sometimes also in Spanish. There were many, vendors and subcontractors on site that were local to Spain who did not speak English. Being able, like I've been studying Duolingo like crazy just so I can get by. Not that I'm exceptional at Spanish, and Spanish is not my second language, but yet taking the time to teach myself over the past year in preparation for the install, knowing that I'm going to be going back, I'm going to have to interface. I'm not going, and in this case specifically, I'm not going back with members of my team that were fluent Spanish speakers. So it fell on me to be as much of an interpreter as possible. And also thank God for Google Translate. but really communication is so key, because as a project manager, you're constantly having to communicate with everybody, especially once you're on site. When you are on site, and I cannot reiterate this enough, when you're on site, that means the end of the install.
Yeah.
You are on a deadline. Early into the project, things are still tight, but if you slide a week here or there, you're still okay. If you slide a week on an install on an already super tight deadline, there are some major ramifications, and for your company, there could be some serious financial ramifications for not meeting the handover date, the deadline. And so really being able to communicate and organize and rally the troops and prioritize on site, because, again, it's that sort of communication and organization, being able to prioritize everybody. Like, okay, you need to be in this room. So today the carpenters have this room, but the moment they're done, then we've got the electronics team moving in. And the moment the electronics team is done moving in, then we've got the next team coming in. And so being able to coordinate and organize everybody so nobody is standing around doing nothing, and making sure you're maximizing every single dollar you're spending on labor on site, and as well as materials. And there's also just a method to the installation phases that have to be met. Certain things have to be done before other things, or else you're setting everything back. If you paint too early, then you're gonna have to bring painters back out. If you paint too late, then you might paint over something that you don't want painted. There's just all of this great coordination that has to be done. And so, communication and organizational skills, top priority for a project manager.
Andrew, go ahead.
Going to lower my hand first so that I remember this time. Also, and so if this gets too deep into like personal psychology, feel free to evade the question. But coming from like a creative background of photography, graphic design, I would say teaching is a creative field as well. Where you're going from that to where you're working with a lot of creative people, but you're sort of more a glue between them. Is there ever any like frustration there, or is there a way that you feel like you're expressing that kind of creative desire in your role?
I mean, how honest do you want me to be?
You feel comfortable with.
To be 100% honest with you, yes, there are days where it absolutely drives me crazy. Not gonna lie, it absolutely drives me crazy that I'm not involved, or at least in a role that allows me to voice my opinion and have it be heard. Where you can voice it, but it doesn't mean squat sometimes. And so, understanding your role, as The Rock would say, know your role. And so understanding that certain jobs, even if you come from a creative background, your job isn't always creative. Sometimes it is highly valued at the right moments and times, and sometimes it's not. And you just got to be able to set aside your personal desires sometimes, set aside your ego at times, and I also find that for me, when I was at my worst point in trying to find that balance, I made an opportunity for myself. I started a podcast, and therefore me and my friends, all we did every podcast is we just made stuff up. I got to then use that creative side of me to retheme all these existing attractions and do it in a way where I wasn't jeopardizing my career, but I was able to scratch that itch that was giving me hives. It was so bad. And so like that was really for me, and I think for everyone, you've got to find the balance or you're going to make yourself miserable. And I feel so many people fall into that trap where they just want to blame everybody and they just want to say, well, so-and-so didn't listen to me, blah, 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 blah. I'm being held back at my job. And it's like, that's not always the case. In reality, I wasn't being held back at all at my job. I'm a project manager. I'm not in creative. I'm not a designer. That's not my job. So therefore, I have to, again, check my ego, regardless of whatever creative background I have and whatever I think I'm good at and whatever creative ideas I think I could bring to the table. And the reality is focus on what I'm getting paid to do.
Yeah.
And things ebb and flow, relationships change. You never know when your opportunity is going to come. So I'm not saying like give up on being creative. I'm not going to give up on being creative. I think I still have a huge opportunity to bring some real creative ideas to the industry. And I hope one day I get that opportunity. But the reality is in the role I'm in currently, that's not my job. My job is to assist and make sure that our creative team gets to deliver their great creative ideas. And the best part is it's a relationship. So if they respect me and they respect my opinion and they respect my ideas, they come asking for them. So developing that trust with your team, with them understanding again that you're not somebody who's out to take their job. Nobody needs to be threatened when you come bringing good ideas, but that everybody's in it to make things better. And I've been very upfront ever since I got hired there. I want to be part of the design team, but understanding that's just not the role I'm in. But they value my opinions, and there's a time and place to give them.
Yeah. Okay, I appreciate the honesty there.
Absolutely. I'm an open book.
And I think you'll agree too, Logan, that the beginning of your story sounded like, hey, I have no construction experience, but I'm super creative and I'm great with people. And that got you the job. But now imagine a guy who knows construction, who's also super creative and great with people and all of that. So the value now is entirely a different value than you had coming in.
Absolutely.
Hey, I want to ask a quick question as we lead into the Q&A about Sally Dark Rides. The a couple times I've had creative time working with them. I just felt that there's this incredible warmth in that company with the people, that there's I don't want to use the word family, that everybody, that's a bad word now in business, but there seemed to be this welcome. Maybe it's Southern hospitality, I have no idea, but
it goes a long way.
Yeah, I really appreciated the way that company tends to work. Can you tell us a little bit more about Sally Dark Rides, their position in the industry, and what it's like working with them?
Absolutely. Well, we're a company who's coming up on 45 years in the industry. So we actually just celebrated a company birthday this past weekend. So, happy birthday to Sally. Our company has created so many amazing dark rides throughout the world, but it all started with a single character. So a single animated head that started for a school project. So one of the original Johns, there were 3 Johns that started the company. One of them created a project where in their class, they made an animated head and made an audio recording by one of their classmates. And that was the spark that started what became this Sally Industries, with the start of the manufacturing of animatronics. At the beginning, being animated mannequins, essentially, much like the amazing 80s movie. And then taking it from there and being able to capitalize on the trends in the industry, as it started out as just single animatronics, moving into the Chuck E. Cheese phase and being able to move into more of a band show, a larger production, providing animatronics for dark rides, and then realizing we have all the skills to do this ourselves. And so then taking the company in a slightly different direction, making a pivot and moving into dark rides and becoming turnkey providers for the dark rides. So not only providing the animatronics that would go in a dark ride, but as well as then hiring the ride system manufacturer, providing all the scenic, all the audio, all the interactivities, which would later come on. And then we've just continued to evolve and expand to the point where now we just installed our first dark coaster at Portaventura with the uncharted El Enigma de Penitence. So we're really, really excited about that. And that was my project. So I'm happy to be back on the East Coast, and it'd be in 9 p.m. instead of 3 a.m.
Yeah.
So yes, I mean, that's really the company has just continued to evolve over the years and adjust with trends in the industry and always try to stay one step ahead. And it's been an amazing company to work for. I'm coming up on 8 years with Sally, and I have so much that I owe to this company and the opportunities that have been provided to me when they took a chance on a guy with a BFA and graphic design and an MFA in photography, and they started letting me lead all these major $1 million installations and attractions, and to have, to put that faith in me, and to also teach me along the way, mentor me. Donna Gentry, our VP of project management, has been such a huge mentor to me right from the beginning, taking me under her wing and everything I've learned from her. And then honestly, every member of the team, I like to say, groomed me. They all groomed me because they saw this fresh face who didn't come in with all this industry knowledge as far as, construction and AV. So they saw me as, oh, here's a clean slate. We can actually teach him what we need him to do. And so by each department kind of taking a little bit of ownership of me in my initial training, they prepared me to be the best project manager I can be. And then just taking pride in everything I do for the company, and knowing that, like, I'm 120% kind of guy. I'm not just going to give you 100. I'm going to give you everything and then some. So being able to take that mentality and just continue applying it to every new thing I needed to learn along the way, that's what sort of prepared me for where I'm at now. And the company has just been there to support me every single step of the way. And so, yeah.
Incredible.
Theme Park Shuffle. that's our podcast, in case you were wondering. So yeah, Theme Park Shuffle.
I've got a ton of windows open from all the links that I gotta grab onto. So good job, everybody. Hey, let's open it up for a broad Q&A. Feel free to unmute yourself and just ask a question. No need to raise your hand or be called on. Go right ahead and ask Logan anything you got on your mind.
I have two questions, if I may. Logan had mentioned, I just read so much. I got so many books and read. If you could recommend some of your favorite or most useful ones. And also you mentioned it a bit, but you kind of skirted around it. You're in a very unique position in that project manager, producer, coordinator, they're one of the few roles that touches everybody else on the team. Other folks are like super hyper focused on
Mhm.
like show control, whatever. So you do help instill and maintain culture on those teams.
Yes.
So what books would you recommend, and any advice in terms of how to sort of maintain a culture across a team when you might be the only one over here this day, over here this day, over there that day?
Oh, I'm trying to think of the books off the top of my head. I'd have to look those up, to be honest with you. There's, oh gosh, there's a couple of great ones. One of them I went back to when I was teaching at Art Institute of Jacksonville, and when the school was going through its closeout, I basically rated the interior design department. So everything, they had a whole section of the library where it was just like, the school's closing, take whatever books you want. So I went and I grabbed almost every interior design and construction book I could find, and I brought them all back. So that many of those were what kind of got me started. Those were the books that really helped me understand the construction documents. I tried to teach myself CAD, and I was like, no, I can't do that. This is just trying to teach myself through a book is the wrong way to learn CAD. So I had to backtrack and just have my team teach me everything I needed to know about CAD and understanding it, reading it, using it on site, and then just learning through doing was a big one there. There was another great book. I'm trying to remember what the title of it was. I mean, obviously the theme park project management's a good one.
Did you ever read Buzz Price?
I did. No, I have not.
Gotta read that one.
I know that's a good one. Yeah. Gosh, I'm trying to think. Of course, there were the Walt Disney Imagineering books that I had to read as part of the Walt Disney class. And that, I mean, just those alone really helped prepare me for the different phases of project management, understanding every single step of a project from initial blue sky all the way to not only installation, but then also modifying, adjusting, adapting, even after the project's been done, going back, and then how do you then redo a project? So those books were exceptional. So all of the Imagineering books have been super helpful. But there was one in particular that was about theatrical set design that was really, really helpful. I know Josh Stedman posted about it a few months ago on LinkedIn, and I have the book. It's failing the top of my head what the actual title of it is.
I'm sure we can put it out on the.
Do you know it, Sally?
I don't know the book, but I have a book related question.
Oh, okay.
You got him off the hook.
No, I'll return back to MK's question, the second one. What was the question about the book, Sally?
You can finish MK's question and then I'll ask mine.
Okay. All right. So MK, you were asking about just all of the different relationships and
Yeah, keeper of the culture. No big deal.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I wish I had some good books on that one. But the one thing I will say is for anybody who is interested in learning more about leadership, about developing culture, there are some exceptional podcasts. There are exceptional Harvard Business Review free articles that you can read. They do limit the amount of articles you can read per week, or is it per month? I can't remember. But either way, they are so good at helping you better understand relationships if you're very choosy on which ones you click on. So that's the secret. It's just read the little description and then you're like, that's the one, click on that.
It also hasn't figured out. I cheat the system by going in through 2 different browsers.
There you go.
Sometimes it's Netscape, sometimes it's Chrome. And it thinks about 2 different people.
That is awesome. But really, like if we're talking about just sort of trying to develop the culture, if you will, or keep the culture, you have to sort of set the standard as a leader, as a project manager. how you respond, how you talk to people when it comes to essentially setting the culture, and also changing the culture. If you notice that people are not talking in a very polite way to each other, if people are just flat out being rude, if it is not in line with the way you want your company to be represented, it's partly your responsibility to call them out in a way that is not in front of everyone, so they don't feel as defensive, but you have a responsibility to yourself and your team to have those difficult conversations, to make sure that the right culture is fostered, and especially, you know, like at Sally, that's a big part of it, is having that moment where we're such a small company, we can't risk not getting along. When you've got a very small company, and if you have 2 to 3 people who are just refusing to coexist, you can't function. So it's of the uttermost importance to everybody to be on the same team. You don't have to agree. And in fact, you know, not agreeing is oftentimes the best thing and creates the best results. And you need to have an environment where people have the freedom to not agree. You need to have a little bit of a challenge. But again, fostering that environment where it's not just everybody can say whatever they want, whenever they want, and there are no repercussions. Also fostering an environment where not one person's voice is the most important one and trumps everybody, regardless of whether it's rational or not. So having checks and balances and just making sure that everybody is doing their part to make the company culture better in general. And having the right people in the right positions too make a big difference.
Can I jump in on that real quick?
Absolutely,
Logan?
Kyle. Yes, please.
I just was having a conversation with a colleague earlier today about the importance, really the critical importance of embracing dissent when you're in ideation. You know, and yes, it can't be a free-for-all, but a good leader needs to seek out even and bring to the table the critique, because if all you have are people who are all excited about the idea and barreling down the road, which is fantastic, but nobody's there to say, hey, what about such and such? You go, I never even thought of that. The face pump will happen, yes. But it might happen at a very expensive time.
Yeah.
So in any creative process or development process, yes, you know, we are not your enemy. And I say we because I know who I am. But it's very hard sometimes for leaders to accept critique.
Yeah.
And if you can show, as a leader, if you can show your team that not only do you accept it, but you embrace it, and lo and behold, when you discover something through it, everybody evolves. So anyway, I just wanted to really underscore that. It's like, yes, you know, we need the what about and what if and have we thought of happening when we're doing it. So I'm just glad you said that, and I heartily support it.
Yeah, and I think too, to pick up on that, Kyle, as well, is if you are somebody who is what may be considered a naysayer, somebody who's just saying that won't work, that won't work, that won't work. If you want to bring something to the table, don't just say that won't work. Explain why. Yeah. You've got to be able to explain why it doesn't work. Yes. And if you've got other options, your team will be much more open to you constantly saying that won't work.
Yes. Well, and rather than that won't work, it's have we thought of X?
Yeah.
What about Y? You know, we could do it this other way. You're absolutely right. It's got to come from a positive, supportive, moving the conversation along, not just that won't work and sitting back and waiting for them to come up with another idea. No.
Right.
No. Those people have a special place in the afterlife. Anyway, thank you.
Anybody else?
I can pop in with my book related question if that works.
Absolutely.
So on the topic of both books and self-guided journeys, I'm doing the Artist Way this summer as a way to inspire
Oh, I did
creativity in
that.
my
It's great.
everyday life. Yeah, and it's been awesome applying that here. I'm curious for Logan and also any of the professionals on this call, how do you keep your personal creative pursuits alive when it's easy to say that your work is creative and say that that's filling the bucket when really we all come with so many different backgrounds from photography and drawing, and how do you keep those creative pursuits and sense of individuality alive in your busy schedules and busy workloads?
I'll jump on this first. I think you have to, as a project manager, you have to schedule the time. You have to make the time. You have to set aside time for yourself, for everybody. You know, you've got to prioritize, just like going to the gym. If you're, you know, serious about your health and you're like, you have to make time to go to the gym. The gym is not just one of those things that you can magically go to anytime you want, whenever you want. Like, you have to make the effort to go to the gym to work out. And it's the same way with being creative. You have to set aside time, even if it's just 15, 20 minutes every night, to jot down in a notebook some of the ideas you may have. Because a lot of times what happens too is if you hold it in, it doesn't move past that stage.
Yeah.
The only way to kind of continue developing, like I also often say, you have to sort of empty to make room for new. So by writing down, by just getting it on paper, getting it out of your head and onto something real and tangible, it then allows your brain to continue the conversation, to continue developing. Many times, like when you can't sleep at night because you're afraid the moment you wake up, you're going to lose this idea. You're like, and you can't stop thinking about it. The only way you're going to move on and relax and sleep is you got to write it down. And so for me, that's just kind of part of my process, is just to take the time. If I've got an idea that I just can't shake, I can't get it out of my head. And I know my wife would support me in this, is it's like, just write it down so we can get Logan back. Because right now you're in your head, like, get out of your head, be here, be present. So just, if it takes 15, 20 minutes, just go write down whatever you're thinking about, because we want you back, like right now, family time.
Yeah. Anybody else want to answer that question about not really work-life balance, but creative task balance?
There's a few things that I very specifically do, just so that I'm like, yep, in my head, I always get to do these things. And then we are very often called to advise on projects. I had a meeting yesterday that was just we're kind of a little stuck on this thing. Can you come in and just talk to us? And which I do that a lot, like particularly when groups, like after the brainstorm and they sort of wane. And this one, at the end of it, they said, we're actually paying you. That was amazeballs. Because I think we forget that, like, what we do every day, a lot of other people don't have experience in doing that. So just being available to be a mentor often is useful. But every year, and I'm just inviting you all right now, every year I have MK's Hallmark Holiday Movie Mocktacular, which is a party that went digital, obviously went over Zoom, but it's a creative endeavor where there's prizes, there's games, you get extra bonus points if you show up in costume. It used to just be 13 guests because I only had 13 chairs. And it was a big Christmas dinner. But going online, I had about 55 people this year. And that's fun for me to plan. There's always a few students who are like, I'll help with the trivia, which means I have to tell them what episode of the Hallmark Holiday they're watching. And that like that keeps me going for a long time. Just to know that, at the, because you start planning in like October. Just knowing that there's a thing over here, and just little things like, you all want a package from me because I wrap Christmas gifts pretty amazeballs. So think about those little things. Don't think about the big thing like, oh, I need to learn how to crochet and make everyone a sweater. That's overwhelming, but think about in little ways, things whatever makes me happy, and it makes them happy when they see it.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, the prizes are all flat because I have to mail them to you.
There you
So whatever prize you earn in the Hallmark Holiday Movie Mocktacular event, it's coming flat, and it's also
That's
discounted.
super fun.
Yeah, you
But
had me
sometimes,
at
I think
Hallmark
sometimes
Christmas.
sometimes we pressure ourselves and, oh, must be creative. And, most people who made their side hustle a job can tell you it's no longer fun, right? Their whatever their crafting was no longer fun. So, the mocking is really an homage, Andrew. Excellent question. Thank you. It
Thank
is for the
goodness, thank
love
goodness.
of the craft, that we are celebrating it.
That's great. That's great.
Listen, the year Dolly Parton did one, my God.
That's awesome. Anybody else want to share that good work-life balance?
I actually just want to make a comment more than a question. I would just say for Logan, because I felt, you were really on the installation and the project management side. For many years, I worked for iTech Productions. Now it's turning into Thinkwell. And we did a lot of concepts. And the way I would describe it for those of you who have not been in this environment, blue sky is probably, one fun afternoon or 2 or 3 days, locked in a room saying, what is this thing? And then it's 6 or 8 months of drawing based on that one set of meetings, but doing all of those concepts, I was always sort of, we were the tip of the spear, but I was always sort of saying, hey, I really want to see this built. And so I felt like there's this longing, like, hey, Logan, I want to be on the design, the leading edge of it. But there's 2 sides of the grass is always greener, I could say, because it's, you get to see it, sort of opening and see the smiles on the faces as the guests go through. So I think the point is that whatever side that you end up on, if it's one or the other or a combination of both, there's always a longing to be to have the different side of the project that you may not be on, but that doesn't mean that your work is not valuable and that there's not a great place for you. So in any case, I'll leave that there. I just wanted to say that there's definitely a place for you no matter where you end up, and
Yeah.
they're all valid and they're all good.
Absolutely. And I'll touch on one more thing that you just brought up too, Nate. To promote project management, you actually get to be there for handover. Many people never get to ride the ride that they may spend years working on.
Yeah.
Years dedicated to their lives working on a project, and they may never get to ride it. But as a project manager, you will be there for handover. You will get to ride it. Even on the latest attraction where I was technically too tall to ride, I rode it.
Nice. Yeah, Logan's taller than me, and a lot of people think that we're brothers. We're just the Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson of themed entertainment. So no, it's hard to be tall.
All right.
I was so sad to hear when a friend of mine, his son, who turned out to be like 6'9", he'll never get to ride Space Mountain again. Never. That's out of the question. And I thought, no, how sad that is that you get all that height, but you can't play.
Yeah.
I had no idea there were maximum heights.
There are indeed.
Think about it, but yeah.
Yep. In fact, Pipeline's another one of the max heights that recently came out that I will not be able to ride. As a 6'7" person, I have my limitations.
Well, this is great. I'm opening it up for just one more question, and then we can sign off. Ira, Josiah, and I saw a flash on Ira, so I'll give you 2 more questions. Go ahead, Josiah.
Oh, excellent. Thank you for this fantastic conversation. Also, congratulations on Uncharted opening. It looks fantastic.
Thank you.
How do you see yourself growing with Sally Dark Lights, kind of in the further echelons of your career?
Oof, that's a good question. I see many opportunities within the company. So I see who knows, maybe one day I will get the opportunity to work in design. I don't know, maybe. I certainly see it as an opportunity. That door is not closed in any way. Maybe I'll move up into more of an executive role. Who knows? You know, I'll just continue learning everything I can, preparing the best way I can to move into any other position. The only thing I will guarantee you is I will not be a project manager for the rest of my career. So there will reach a point where I personally will want growth. And, you know, I've been honest with my company about that as well. Like, everybody understands that I love project management, and this is what I do and what I thrive at now. But I have bigger ambitions, and you know, I don't think anybody should be sort of stuck in one role for too long in their career just because they're good at it. So that's something everybody needs to understand and take charge of. You control where you go next. You may not have all the control, but fate many ways dictates where you go next. Just look at my story when I told you at the beginning, I should be a teacher if all would have been as planned. So many things are out of your control, but I will say that, you know, I've just been open and honest with my team as far as what I'm kind of looking for, the next round of challenges, where I want to move, and where I feel I have the most to add to the company. Because I think that's also important when you are speaking with your company about where your future lies. It's really proposing the opportunities that work best for the company, not just you personally, but also what works best in the long run for everyone involved.
Awesome.
Thank you.
And that
Thank
may
you.
not be at your same company. This is a very project-based industry. So like you were saying earlier, Logan, there are skill sets across a wide range of industries that are very applicable.
Yes.
Like when I started, we used to be able to say there's no such thing as a degree in theme park. Well, now there's about 9. And Peter Weischer founded them all. So there are skill sets that will go from, you know, construction or video game design or
Yep.
theater that are very applicable, and you can weave in and out of there.
Absolutely.
So, you know, a world-class plumber can easily, you know, with the proper, you know, mentorship, do really well in themed entertainment.
Yep.
So expect that your move, whatever best for you personally or your career or the company, might be another company, which is why your reputation matters so much in this industry.
Yes.
You are only as good as the last job you did. And because we do a terrible job of explaining what our jobs are, a lot of folks want to step into this industry and are like, I'm a art director. No, sweetheart, you're not. So getting a realistic expectation as to what the jobs are and what the paths are is what's going to give you a really good trajectory for success. And what you need changes over time.
Yeah.
Right. Like if you need to pay off a $80,000 school loan, that's a different choice that you make than I just went, you know, backwards in some ways, but forwards in many ways by ending up in academia. Right. So what an amazingly wide breadth of stuff I'm doing right now, for way, way less money. But you know, you'll do this over the course of your career. So pick and choose. And every single person here, both the panelists and the students, is an asset for you.
Yeah.
Reach out, say hello, connect, ask questions. This conversation doesn't end when Freddie hits end call here. This is an ongoing conversation, so please do reach out. It's a very mentoring industry. I mean, Logan just said, like, he showed up and everyone was like, great, we're gonna make this work, instead of, who are you? Who do you think you are, son? Like, we kind of tend to have a good mentory kind of bent in this biz.
Yeah, and to piggyback on everything MK just said, also, like, for me personally, I'm not chasing titles, because many people focus on titles. You need to focus on opportunities. Like, where are the opportunities? Not just, I want to be this title. Like, I won't be happy unless I'm a creative director. I won't be happy unless I'm the next CEO. Like, no. Don't focus on the titles. Focus on the opportunities. Where do you want to grow? Where is your trajectory, and what do you want to learn that builds on the skills you already have? So really reading carefully all the job descriptions that are out there, because you'll even find project manager job postings. I constantly read them because I'm so fascinated how each one is so different. And that because each company has a different role, responsibility, and need and process for that specific company. And so you just never know really what the job title entails. So carefully read that, but also focus on what you want to do moving forward for your happiness and your growth, especially for those of you who are in the field and are looking for maybe the second phase of your career or third phase of your career. Really, chasing the title isn't always what you want. It's, you know, it's the weenie in the park. It'll draw you in, but it may not be
There's lots of
end all.
experiences along
There's
Main
lots of
Street, man.
experiences. At the end of the day, the castle is just a castle. But guess what? You know, Pirates of the Caribbean, Haunted Mansion, that's my jam.
Well, thank you all for being here. This has been really, really great. I mean, you count, there's 18 participants here. That is 18 people who got a really wonderful, intimate understanding of the Logan's story and where he's been. Plus, I wouldn't hang up until you've got all of those resources that are in the sidebar. I know we're recording this, and so this is going to be available out there, but grab those links before you go. We'll leave it open until you can until you log off. Really grateful for the time we had. Nate, do you have any last minute instructions? I know we got some milestones coming up with the student showcase. Sorry.
Yeah, okay, a couple announcements. Number one, the panelists are busy tabulating their scores. Most of them are, well, not all of them. Some of them are finished, and I've seen some of the feedback already. When they are tabulated, Dr. Jesse Cam, who is in Belgium, couldn't be here tonight, will crunch the numbers and find out the winners of the different categories and the overall best in show for the themed attraction student showcase. That is really not the emphasis of this event. The event is to get you connected with these folks and help you grow as a person. So that's our primary function and goal. So we will be having a series of, I believe it's 4 feedback sessions. There were 40 projects, so we're going to divide them basically up into 10 each. It's not exactly going to be 10 based on the number of projects in each category, but there'll be 4 sessions coming up in July if we can make it all happen with all the panelists. And then also MK Haley has volunteered her time for a different topic coming up, and maybe MK, you want to plug yourself, and that's a TBD on the date.
Yeah, I'm lecturing at the Maritime Museum in Maine for doing several workshops this summer, because guess what? They're interested in telling stories in a better way. And that was the gentleman who's the current executive director was a PhD student at FSU, where Peter was my boss. And he was getting his PhD in identifying the doodles in the sides of medieval manuscripts, because you could often tell who the scribe was. I mean, it was a very esoteric topic. And then he was my TA for 3 years and fell in love with theme entertainment, changed his mind. He took an internship for $5 an hour at the Maine Maritime Museum, and now he's executive director. So we're a pretty addictive industry. So he's invited me up for a workshop. So sometime after late July, early August, we'll do a workshop on storytelling. And we're an industry that's all like story, story, story. But a lot of people actually don't know what that means. And sometimes it's easy to dismiss it as like, is that some weird guy in Birkenstocks with a guitar? And so I usually actually don't have it in the first 3 or so weeks of my classes until we get some work under our belt, and then we talk about story. But what's really interesting about the topic of story in general, this is a very Western take. We do tip our toes a little bit into Asian, but mostly Western, is, wow, it keeps changing. You know, think about the stuff that we're doing with interactive narratives, with telling stories over, you know, tiny screens. So there's a core to sort of the history and the hero's journey and all, which we'll cover all that. But it's a workshop, it's a lecture I'm constantly updating, because how we tell our stories is really continuing to change. So if there's anyone who has something very specific they want to cover in that, reach out to me and I'll include a few slides. But the general theme is what the heck is storytelling? Why does it matter to humans? Unless you have a photographic memory, it is the only way humans learn. And then how we do that in our universe.
Yep. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Did I say thanks, anybody? Thanks, everybody. What a privilege to be with this tight little group. I just put a link to my LinkedIn. Please do connect with me there. I'm always on the lookout for talented people. So let's start a conversation early. And appreciate everybody. Thank you, Nate. Thanks to the rest of the panelists. We're grateful to be part of this.